Maybe you've been following my channel for a while and know a little bit about my story. But for those of you that don't, I did not grow up knowing God. I grew up a Jewish girl without his name or presence in our home or my life. I grew up knowing survival. And by the time I was 31 years old and met Jesus for the first time, I had already lived through enough pain for several lifetimes. And I want to tell you that about those years today, not because I'm a victim. I'm not. But because somebody watching this right now needs to know that the woman talking to her has been exactly where she is, in the dark, without God, without the tools, without anyone who could show her the way through it. And I made it, not because I was strong enough, but because he was. And even before I knew his name, I was a woman who had been shaped by pain from the very beginning. My parents didn't want me. My parents had a very stressful marriage that ended by the time I was 3 years old. And I was abused at the hands of the people who were supposed to protect me from the very beginning. I had a broken spirit by the time I was 19. I had no moral compass, no faith, no framework for understanding any of it because nobody gave me one. And because I didn't grow up in a home where God was spoken or faith was modeled or love was unconditional, I grew up learning to survive and I got very good at it. I have shared a little bit about my story in my video before I was 19 and my mother and father wound healing videos. I hope you go and watch them. So, my first marriage, when I walked into my first marriage, we had been together since we were sophomores in college and we married by the time we were 27. I walked in with it carrying all that I just shared with you. And remember, we did not talk about trauma or inner child work back then. From the beginning, it was clear that I was not accepted by his family. I wasn't Catholic, and I was asked to go to the Catholic Church and pay money so that I could be accepted into it. They told me I needed to raise my children Catholic, and I told them over my dead body. And they said, okay, $500. And I walked out. It was literally took me 15 minutes inside of that room. I signed a little thing and out I went. Yes, I was married inside the Catholic Church, but I never went back after that day. And that mattered more in his family than I did. And the irony of that is what would follow is what happened in my second marriage, where the pressure to convert again would be used as a weapon against me. But that comes later. My first marriage ended when my daughter was 1 year old. We had only been married for 2 years and he left. I lost everything I had built, every dollar I had, and I became a single mother for almost 7 years, alone, raising my daughter, surviving the way I had always survived, putting one foot in front of the other, not stopping, not standing still, and forcing myself to get up every day and work jobs I hated with bosses who abused me too and took advantage of the fact that I was a single mom. And there was no sexual harassment back then. So I kept silent, keeping my face composed for everyone around me, not looking down at what was underneath of everything that was happening to me. And in those years between my first marriage and my second marriage, there was more pain, more relationships that cost me things I did not have to give, more moments of reaching for something that felt like love because I had never been taught what love was actually supposed to feel like. And I was not choosing badly on purpose. I was choosing what was familiar, what I felt was home. So even when home had never been safe, that's what I kept choosing. And my second marriage was unhealthy from the start. We were already in therapy before we got married. We got married within, I want to say, 6 months of being together. And then we went back to therapy after our daughter was born, a year and a half, 2 years in. You can do the math and you can understand how I'm explaining that I didn't have that moral compass. And the therapist warned me 3 years into our marriage that he was going to leave me. And my daughter was just 3 years old and my first daughter was 11. And it was around that time that my husband found Jesus. And we had both come into the marriage Jewish, and that pulled at me deeply because I was struggling with the reality of what that meant after my first marriage and what the church had already impressed upon me then. But I watched something change in him, signs of love, signs of peace, a respite from everything that had been building between us. And it pulled at me. So I began to seek it for myself, not through church, not through sermon, and not because anyone sat me down and explained it to me. I read the Gospel of Matthew and I accepted Christ quietly through a person who shared something with me that I could not walk away from. And something in me that had been moving fast my entire life went still. And I did not know what to do with that. I had no framework for it. I explained I already had no understanding of grace or mercy or what any of it meant. I just knew something had to change. And so I said yes. And I spent the first 6 months of knowing God sobbing on the floor of my bedroom, begging him to forgive me for everything I had done not knowing him and for being Jewish. And I was mad at the Jews. And I tell that story in my video where I share when I did convert to Catholicism. That's a story for another day. Go watch it. And it wasn't because someone told me to. It wasn't because I understood who he was. I was overwhelmed by the gap between who I had been and who I was finding out he was. And I did not yet understand that the gap was already closed, that the grace was not something I had to earn, that he had already been with me in every moment that I thought I was alone. He was in the water with me when no one came for me, when the catamaran tipped, when I was not even 9 years old. In every relationship that cost me more than I had, he had been there. I just didn't know it yet. And here's what I know now that I did not know then. God was not absent in those years. He was building something in me, something that could not have been built any other way. Not because he wanted me to suffer or that he wants you to suffer, but because he knew what was coming. He knew what I would need to survive what was ahead. He knew the weight I would have to carry, and he was making sure I would not have to carry it alone. Even when I felt like I was alone, even when the prayers went unanswered in the way I needed them to be answered, and when my faith was barely a thread. He was there. He was faithful. Even when I could not see it, even when you cannot see it, he is there. And I would never wish to go through the 17 years that followed that moment. But they shaped me into the woman I am today, the woman who walks with the depth of compassion and empathy and the calling on my life. A promise to my mother and before she passed, and a promise to God. Whether it's easy or continues to challenge me, grieving everything I have lost since I walked out that door and finished my education to become the trauma coach I am today. Those years produced the very tools and resources I needed 31 years ago, and now I get to give them to you. And I get to keep telling my story here on this channel, through my blog, and through social media. So if you're watching this and you feel your story is too broken, too complicated, too far, that anything that could ever be redeemed, I want you to hear this from someone who has lived it. There is no story too heavy for God. There is no lifetime too painful that he cannot redeem. There is no amount of struggle that you can experience and no amount of years lived without him that he cannot restore. But God are my two favorite words ever. And in next week's video, I'm going to tell you the exact reason why it all matters to me and why I shared this story with you today. Because next week, I'm going to tell you about the morning, a morning that I was on my floor without nothing left, a morning where I was all alone. And what happened next changed everything for me. And everything I shared with you in every video that I do share is exactly the work we do inside my program, Self-Paced Program, the Inner Healing Journey Method. It's not surface work. It's not a quick fix. It's not another thing that asks you to perform healing that you have not yet found. It's real work at the level where your wounds actually live. And all of it can be found in the description right here in this video. You'll see the link right here. And before you go, would you subscribe and help me reach 1 million women over 50 who need to hear stories like this and what I share here? And if you know a woman or a group of women who need to hear this, please share it with them, because no woman needs more advice. Trust me. She needs to know someone finally said what has been a silent scream inside of her out loud. And if you're a man watching this, a husband, a father, a leader, a pastor, I am pleading and begging with you to read and share my ebook, Raising Her Worth. It's the solution to what I just shared in this video and over the last 8 weeks. Leaders, healing flows from the top down, and every woman in your life needs you to know what is taught throughout Raising Her Worth and the companion workbook. Future generations deserve you to know and do better. God bless your healing. Thank you for being here, and I will see you next Monday.